it's really important to note that Chappelle has said, actually in the special himself, that he's not making fun of trans people. He's making fun of white people. He's very specific about who his target is, that he specifically is targeting white people and racism in his, and he's kind of putting trans and people of color into a similar group, that they're both experiencing racism or bias and violence and getting the short end of the stick here in society. And I think he's kind of clear about that as well. So I will open this aperture now to a bigger discussion, which I think is, are you getting the sense that corporations have had enough of cancel culture and virtue signaling? I wonder if Ted Sarandos would have come out this strong and said, hey, listen, he's essentially saying, if you don't like it, you should change the channel, which I remember when I was growing up. It's really interesting generationally how we see things differently. Gen X, when we were raised that absolutely freedom of speech was such a critically important tenet of a democracy that you had to accept speech you did not agree with, that was offensive, and that part of the package of a free society was that some amount of free speech was going to be uncomfortable. And, if the Ku Klux Klan wanted to march down Main Street, the ACLU would back them up. And not because they agreed with what they were saying, but they agreed with their right to say it. That's how our generation, Gen Z, for the millennials and the Gen Zs, this is how Gen X was raised. Now, it's really interesting to watch millennials kind of shift a little bit over, and then Gen Z shifting all the way over. And now you, I think, have the corporation saying, listen, there's got to be something more reasonable than canceling Dave Chappelle, whose body of work is unbelievable. He's the greatest comedian on the planet today, by far. Certainly, I think everybody would agree with that. If you asked 100 comedians who the greatest comedian is right now, they would say Dave Chappelle. I mean, they might make a joke, but they'd say me, then Dave Chappelle. And so are we canceling Dave Chappelle now? I mean, because he clearly does not intend harm here, but it is clearly offensive to people. So I get that as well. And it relates to what we saw with Brian Armstrong, I think, at Coinbase. He said, listen, we're a mission-based company. And I talked about this on episode 1295 and all in episode 49. At the time, Coinbase was worth like 10 billion. Now it's worth like 50, 60 billion. He just said to everybody, if you want to talk about politics, if you want to talk about any of these charged issues, do it on your own time. Go find another company if you don't like it. Some people walked. He gave them like a super generous package when you're a company with unlimited resources like they were, tons of cash in the bank. Giving people an amazing severance package is just a way to make it for somebody who is unhappy to say no. Like, imagine right now, you are on a scale of 1 to 10, a 6 in how happy you are at your job. If I offer you 2 months of severance, how many people are saying yes? I offer you 6 months of severance and it's a 6 for you. How many people are saying no to that deal? Like 100% of people who rate their experience at work a 5, 6, or 7, if they got a 6 month or a year package, they're out. And that's basically a new technique I've seen in companies that are dealing with these issues, is just make the exit package so strong that people voluntarily opt out. It's really kind of savvy, for both parties, because you create this exit package that results in signing a non-disclosure. We agree that as part of this payment of 6 months salary plus vesting your options a year, whatever it was, that you're going to, not trash the company on the way out. Quite reasonable. And we won't trash you because it'll be reciprocal. But what Brian Armstrong was saying, I think was, listen, I just don't have the energy to deal with cancel culture. It's a distraction. And I think that's now what Netflix is saying to their employees. Listen, I understand some of these things are going to be offensive and we don't believe they're causing harm, but we respect if you believe that. And if you do believe that, you, as a customer, you can change the channel. You can cancel your subscription. So they're putting a line in the sand with the customers. We're not taking it down. If you don't like it, don't watch it. There's other things you can watch. Or you can cancel your subscription. I think that's what Ted's saying here is like, listen, you're an adult. You signed up for this paid. We're not putting this on the open airwaves. This isn't like a, FCC issue where, it's on a public airwave. You're paying and opting into getting this. So if you don't want it, don't pay us. And he's saying to employees, if you don't want to be at a company that leans towards the free expression, uncomfortable speech, pushing boundaries in comedy, there's the door. We'll hash it out with you. But if you're going to stay here, there's always going to be something here That's going to be controversial. Feelings will be hurt. And Armstrong did a Twitter thread about the reaction. And so as evidence piles up that standing up to these issues or saying, hey, we're not going to cancel this person, we're drawing a line here, now I think is the trend we'll see. So there's always a pendulum in these discussions. And I think most people are getting a little tired of the cancel culture. They're getting a little tired of the virtue signaling. I think that's why I think Trump actually ran on that, right? Like, wasn't that part of Trump's positioning is like, we're going to be bad boys and say what we want and you can't cancel us and we're uncancelable. I think that's kind of the appeal of Joe Rogan too. Spotify's not canceling him. So now you have Spotify, Coinbase, and Netflix all saying, like, here's the line. We'll have a reasonable discussion about content, but there's a line here. We're not getting rid of Joe Rogan. We're not getting rid of Dave Chappelle. And you're not going to come to work every day and create a distraction and talk about whatever the most charged issue in the world is. And we'll see what happens with Apple. I think Apple's going to be the real test case. Is Apple going to say to their employees, like, enough? We're just not going to comment on Israel versus Palestine. We're not going to take a position on certain things. And we'll see. Spotify, did concede previously by taking down the Alex Jones episode. If you remember, Alex Jones, of course, was, I think, thrown off of every platform for spreading disinformation and slandering people. And then he lost his lawsuit against the Sandy Hook parents. I mean, if you just think about, there's an example of content that probably does create harm, and you could probably put a 1-to-1 to it, right? Like, Alex Jones is, really spreading conspiracy theories. Somebody who spreads conspiracy theories over and over and over again, I think there is a reasonable, and attacks the parents of murdered children. Like, it's so dark that I could see Spotify saying, you know what? I could even see Joe Rogan saying, like, I don't have a problem with it. Like, I'll take my money and that episode's supercharged. We'll just leave it on another platform. Because there is something about platforming, and that's the larger issue. Are you giving people a platform to spread this hate or to spread misinformation? And again, that's a nuanced issue. When it comes to comedy, people are kind of, I think, coming to a decision that that's going to be a safe space for people to say things that are offensive or maybe push the boundaries. And I think comedians are going to stand their ground on this, and obviously Netflix is as well. So I don't think it's the end to cancel culture, but I think something is changing in corporations where they're just saying, we're going to have to put our foot down at some point. Let's make this the hill we're going to die on. So the hill that Netflix is going to die on is Chappelle. The hill that Coinbase is going to die on is politics at work. The hill that Spotify has chosen to die on, or to fight their last battle, is Joe Rogan. And so I'm interested in your thoughts on this. You can mention me on Twitter @Jason. If you listen to Twist often, you've heard me talk about Odoo's suite of business apps a lot, and they are sweet. Well, they're going to give you your first app free forever and $1,000 off your implementation pack at odoo.com/twist, odoo.com/TWIST. And here is why Odoo is amazing for startups. Their suite of business apps helps you run your entire company on one platform. And they'll streamline the workflows by bringing all your information together, eliminating annoying, repetitive tasks like entering data across multiple platforms. Plus, if you only need 2 or 3 apps to optimize your workflow at your startup, well, that's all you'll pay for. They're not going to charge you for apps you don't use. Of course not. And Odoo offers 30 main apps that are going to get almost everything in your organization done, plus 16,000 apps from their open source community for those niche applications that might be unique to your business. Their apps include bookkeeping, sales, CRM, website builders, and more. So here is your CTA, the old call to action. Again, your first app is free forever, and Odoo is offering $1,000 right now on your first implementation pack. Get that credit right now before it's gone. odoo.com/twist.